What if your bank account could plant trees? That was the pitch. Genuinely. Aspiration partners told you that every time you used their debit card, they'd plant a tree.
Every time you make a purchase on your Aspiration Zero card, we plant a tree.
Any speculation would be crazy. These are guys who committed fraud.
They told you your deposits would only fund ethical businesses. They called themselves the anti-Wall Street bank, the one that was actually on your side. The co-founder, Joseph Sanberg, had the biography to match. Yale-educated, former Obama campaign fundraiser, founder of One Fair Wage, the non-profit pushing for living wages for service workers. He showed up in the right rooms, said the right things, stood next to the right people.
No one who works full-time should have to live in poverty, and raise the federal minimum wage to $9 an hour.
Leonardo DiCaprio invested, Drake invested, Orlando Bloom invested, Robert Downey Jr. invested, Steve Ballmer, the former Microsoft CEO and NBA owner worth $121 billion, invested. Aspiration hit a $2.3 billion valuation.
Why do you think they gave him that much money?
Let me just repeat, I don't know how much money they gave him.
Well, in the court documents and in Pablo's podcast, they report it was $28 million.
And on August 21st, 2025, Joseph Sanberg pleaded guilty to 2 counts of federal wire fraud. The losses to victims, $248 million. Steve Ballmer sent a letter to the judge. It reads, "I was duped and feel silly about that. One of the richest men on earth. Duped, feeling silly. The retail customers who opened accounts because they wanted to bank sustainably, they didn't get to write letters to the judge. They just lost." Uncle K Media presents The Unicorn Graveyard, Episode 8, Aspiration, the green fintech that stole $248 million from people who wanted to save the planet. Let's understand why this worked before we talk about why it was a lie. The ESG movement, environmental, social, governance investing, had been building for years. By 2020, mainstream investors, pension funds, and ordinary people increasingly wanted their money to reflect their values. The idea was simple and compelling. Why park your money at a bank that funds oil pipelines when you could put it somewhere that actually aligned with what you believed? Aspiration understood this moment perfectly. They offered a debit card where every swipe had a conscience score, a rating of how sustainable your purchases were.
Your wallet. There is a new credit card called Aspiration Zero that is helping its users eliminate their carbon footprints.
They offered planet protection, which automatically rounded up purchases to plant trees. They offered the Aspiration Zero card, promising to offset your carbon footprint with every transaction. This was not incidental to the brand. This was the entire brand.
Then you have the ability to plant a tree yourself just by rounding up your purchase to the nearest dollar.
And Sanberg was the perfect front man. Yale, Obama, living wage advocacy. He wasn't a tech bro in a hoodie. He was a progressive activist who happened to be building a bank. The kind of founder who gets profiled in The Atlantic, not TechCrunch. By 2021, Aspiration had raised over $300 million. The $2.3 billion valuation came in the frenzy of the fintech boom. Celebrities were lining up. The pitch deck practically wrote itself. That's the moment the foundation should have been inspected. Nobody inspected it. Here is what was actually happening while Aspiration was planting trees in your name. Sanberg and his co-conspirator, Ibrahim AlHusseini, also a board member at Aspiration, needed cash. Real cash, not investment capital, loans. So they went to lenders and pledged Sanberg's Aspiration stock as collateral. To do that legally, the stock had to be worth something real, so they fabricated the financial documents to make Aspiration look worth borrowing against. The DOJ was specific. They falsified bank statements. They falsified brokerage statements. They created fraudulent financial materials from scratch to convince lenders that Aspiration was something it was not. Using those faked documents, they obtained $145 million in loans. AlHusseini, the co-conspirator, also a board member, personally received approximately $12.3 million in payments from the scheme. He pleaded guilty in March 2025. He cooperated, and Sanberg didn't stop in 2021. The DOJ noted he continued soliciting new investors into Aspiration securities as late as 2025, while under federal scrutiny, while the company was collapsing. Here is what makes this worse than ordinary fraud. Ordinary fraud is cold. The fraudster wants money and takes it. But Aspiration's fraud ran inside a shell of moral language. Every marketing email about planting trees, every conscience score, every planet protection message, that was the camouflage. The ESG brand wasn't the product, it was the cover. Researchers studying the scandal noted that Sanberg had understood something cynical and precise. Investors drawn to mission-driven companies ask fewer hard questions. The sustainability halo doesn't just attract capital, it repels scrutiny. He knew that. He used it. Let's talk about who's not writing letters to the judge. Steve Ballmer is a billionaire. His $121 billion means that whatever he lost in Aspiration, and he's careful not to specify the number publicly, is survivable. His letter to the judge is about reputation, about the NBA investigation that has now been triggered, about being seen as a victim rather than a participant. He'll be fine. Leonardo DiCaprio has been an environmental activist for decades. His investment in Aspiration was public. His loss is real but absorbed. But Aspiration was not just a celebrity investment vehicle. It was a consumer bank. Hundreds of thousands of ordinary people opened accounts. Not because they were speculating, because they genuinely believed that how you bank is a moral choice, and they wanted to make the right one. Those people got none of the glamour of this story. No victim impact statement, no Forbes profile, no Reuters headline. They got an app that eventually stopped working, an account with a company that no longer existed in any meaningful form, and the knowledge that the trees may or may not have actually been planted. Sanberg faces up to 40 years in prison, 20 years on each of the 2 wire fraud counts. Prosecutors requested 17 years. His lawyers submitted letters arguing for leniency, including, and this is real, letters about his charity work. The man who used charity as a mask for fraud submitted his charity work as a reason for a lighter sentence. The sentencing was scheduled for April 28, 2026. $2.3 billion valuation. $248 million in victim losses. 2 guilty pleas, 1 sentencing. DiCaprio, Drake, Ballmer, and hundreds of thousands of ordinary people who just wanted to bank without guilt. Aspiration succeeded as a fraud precisely because its ethics story was so compelling. The more righteous the pitch, the more you need to ask the boring questions. What are the actual financials? Who audited this? What is the real revenue? ESG language is not a substitute for a balance sheet. In fact, when the moral story is louder than the financial story, that's when you dig. AlHusseini was a board member. He was in the room. He falsified documents. He took $12.3 million and then pleaded guilty and cooperated. That is what the governance of Aspiration looked like from the inside. A company's culture is not its marketing materials. It is what the people at the top are willing to do when nobody is watching. Sanberg didn't steal from cynics. He stole from the people who were trying to do the right thing. That specificity matters, morally, reputationally, and legally. Prosecutors take note of who you targeted and why. The people who wanted to save the planet didn't deserve to fund a fraudster's loan collateral scheme. The judge will have read the file. The trees probably weren't planted, or maybe some were. The auditors haven't finished, but the company that promised to plant them, the founder who built his entire identity around that promise, he pleaded guilty to wire fraud in a Los Angeles federal court. The planet doesn't care about your conscience score. Next episode, a product that was genuinely, objectively better than its competitor in almost every measurable way. It had more users, better reviews, faster growth, a more loyal community. It lost anyway because the competition didn't build a better product. They just bundled theirs into software that 1 billion people were already using. And when Slack complained, the EU forced Microsoft to unbundle, and then Salesforce filed suit in a London court 7 days ago. The story of Slack is the most frustrating episode in this series, because Slack didn't fail. Slack was beaten, and that is somehow worse. Subscribe to Uncle K Media, hit the notification bell. This has been The Unicorn Graveyard. Episode 9 is coming.